All right, Hollywood Steve. In his recent interview with the Wall Street Journal, Anthony Edwards was asked how his generation compares to the ones before him and said, quote, "I didn't watch it back in the day, so I can't speak on it. They say it was tougher back then than it is now, but I don't think anybody had skill back then. Michael Jordan was the only one that really had skill. You know what I mean? So that's why when they saw Kobe, they were like, oh my God. But now everybody has skill." Stephen A. Smith. Are Ant-Man's comments out of bounds?
Of course they were out of bounds. Forgive the young buck for what he does not know. He openly admits his youth comes into play, and he's barely seen the older competition from back in the day. So he just doesn't know. Evidently, you know, he talked about Michael Jordan. He didn't see Charles Barkley play. He didn't see Larry Bird play. He didn't see Isaiah Thomas, one of the most skilled point guards this game has ever seen, a person that Michael Jordan has called the second greatest point guard in the history of basketball, behind one Irvin Magic Johnson himself, who Ant Edwards did not mention. So you take those things into consideration. Don't get me started with Larry Bird. I already threw that up in there. I can go back, and when you look at shooters, for example, as great as Steph Curry is, because he's the greatest of all time, wipe Steph Curry out of the mix. Then bring in some of the great shooters in NBA history, the Ray Allens of the world, the Reggie Millers of the world, the Allen Houstons of the world. I can go back to the days of Dale Ellis, Ricky Pierce, and guys like that. I remember downtown Freddie Brown, for crying out loud. There's some people to point to. I remember Andrew Toney at the off-guard spot, Mr. Midrange. We think about DeMar DeRozan. Go back and watch some highlights of Andrew Toney as a Philadelphia 76er. Why'd you look up Mark Aguirre and what he used to do on the basketball court, and Adrian Dantley and others? There's so many names that you can point to. Certainly the game has evolved, and in terms of parity, there's more talent in the NBA today that once existed, but that's entirely different than saying, well, Michael Jordan was the only skilled players. Let's go to the center position. Nikola Jokic is sensational. He is something special. Make no mistake about it. Joel Embiid cannot be ignored. I get all of that. You ever heard of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? You ever heard of Wilt Chamberlain? You ever heard of these guys? You understand what I'm saying? Shaquille O'Neal, excuse me. I mean, he came after them, but still, he wasn't in the Ant-Man era. You look at the most dominant force I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, there's so many things to think about and look at. And so you can look and appreciate today's players, understand that there's an elevated level of talent because they piggyback off the talent that preceded them, the pioneers that came before them. But that's not to sit up there and summarily dismiss the older generation and what they brought to the table and how innovative and tremendously talented as they were. And oh, by the way, let me not forget, even before Kobe Bryant, there was a guy by the name of Vince Carter, the best in-game dunker in the history of basketball. And you know that Ant Edwards is one of my top two favorite players in the NBA, him and Steph Curry. Let me tell you something right now. As phenomenal as Ant Edwards is and is going to be, even with his best dunks, I would ask Anthony Edwards to go back and watch Vince Carter dunk during a game. Watch the show this brother put on. Go back and watch Tracy McGrady and what Tracy McGrady did on the basketball court. I'm just saying.
Okay. So you got Stephen A. Smith's comments on what Anthony Edwards said about the 90s, and this is, you know, going with why he was right about the 90s. So I want to show you just a little something to kind of make a point. Hold on 1 second. All right. Now look at what Kevin Garnett says.
Games, Lord. You ain't watching the games, Lord. You ain't going back watching the games, Lord.
If I'm being honest, bro, I don't think anybody in this generation could have played like 20 years ago. If I'm being 100, and this is to Ant, this is to everybody in our league, Tatum, all y'all. Let me tell y'all something.
So automatically, just here's what we looking at. Just plain the ignoring of evolution and how things get better over time. That's just the natural way of life. And this is something that the 90s fans and old heads can accept. This is something that Jordan fans can accept for the most part. They can accept that LeBron is better than Jordan. They can accept that the evolution, like things get better over time. So this is why so many people are stuck in that past. But he said that nobody in this era today could play 20 years ago. and that ignores evolution. And not only does that ignore evolution, that's in one way or another, this is part of what the reason why Anthony Edwards said what he said, because in the modern era, you have so many people just disrespecting this era. So I'm going to play one more clip and show exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So this is when LeBron was about to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in scoring. And they were talking, and this is a segment that they did about, just pretty much tearing everything LeBron did, tearing it down.
Place or took place on your body when you were playing basketball back then. So that's not to take anything away from LeBron. He's withstood the test of time. His durability, his longevity, his greatness, his conditioning, his commitment to excellence. LeBron James is on a Mount Rushmore of basketball, but especially in the category of scoring. I don't want to hear it. You are absolutely right, JJ Redick. It is a silly question because it's Jordan all day, every day.
Stephen A. I'm not taking anything away from Michael Jordan. Later on in the show, we'll talk about who the greatest players of all time. Let me educate you.
And JJ Redick pretty much put this to bed, but let's just look at it, because he noticed what I and pretty much a lot of people notice is that they spend their time tearing down this era of greats. Whether it's LeBron James, whether it's Kevin Durant, whether it's Steph Curry, they spend their time tearing them down. And then when the same energy is applied, 90s guys, the Bull, just guys that were around during that time, they cannot take it. They cannot deal with it. When the same energy is applied, just like when we done with the 90s, when that trend came around, they were complaining about it, but they spent all this time downgrading LeBron and downgrading, saying they could say the East is weak when LeBron plays and makes the finals 8 times, but the league that Jordan played in wasn't weak. They say it's because he dominated. Just anything you could think of. They just downplay this era. They downplay the greats of this era. So I'm just showing the hypocrisy.
For a second, Stephen A. This is important because this gets brought up all the time. I'm going to educate you for a second because I have a basic understanding of NBA rules. First of all, hand checking. You weren't allowed to do it in the scoring area. Secondly, illegal defense. How many times have we seen LeBron James isolated on the left wing and seen that secondary defender flood the box? It's called flooding the box and coming all the way across. That's illegal defense. In the NBA, in the 80s and 90s, you could not leave your man. So yes, there's more space now. There's also more help. You think about last night and watching him score, taking on 2 defenders every single time. And by the way, the Jordan rules, I get it, man. There was more physicality for sure. A lot of that was just harder fouls. Well,
Go
watch the 1993 NBA Finals against the Phoenix Suns and tell me that was a physical series.
Well, first of all,
go watch. I've watched every game.
Hold on. First of all, calm down.
Okay, so that's another thing. Now, this is another segment they did when LeBron was about to pass Kareem. This is when he was about to pass Kareem.
129-123 OT win at New York.
Again,
the 38-year-old
another
continues to
Let's just
dominate.
look
He's
at
now
how they
80
turn
points
LeBron
away from passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record that has stood for nearly 30.
Jordan. I don't think of LeBron from that standpoint, and that's a tribute to him because he's so great in the other things that he does. I almost don't think of him as being a guy who's going to go down there and, score 45, 50 points a game, and obviously he's capable of doing it. Now, the one thing that does bother me about LeBron, he couldn't play on Monday night in Brooklyn.
Oh, that's the curse for the NBA.
Oh, it's a terrible thing.
What about the guy who took his kid, who actually went to Hawk to take his kid to see the great LeBron play, and he doesn't play that game, the kid's in tears. That is a huge problem. This has become a joke for the NBA. Play the game.
No
He
argument
agrees.
here.
He agrees.
No argument here with you guys.
That's
I've been complaining about it for
that's
years.
impossible.
I've been complaining about it for years, and the NBA is going to, the owners they're going to have to do something with these collective bargaining
Analytics, rest
negotiations
therapy,
to
it's
address
a bunch of
it. They have to
garbage.
do it.
Right.
They have to do it.
But I don't want to get away from how great he is because he is listen, 118 points, he's going to get it. The idea that he's going to wait, though, to get it in L.A., I don't think the L.A. sports fan cares that much about LeBron. You think they haven't sold out?
They don't care about him to the point that they cared about Kobe's, of course
Or
not.
Kareem.
Or Kareem,
Or
or
Magic.
Magic and stuff like that. But they care. Because how much do they have to care about right now?
I understand that.
Got to hold on something.
But the Lakers.
They got a couple more days to the Dodgers start up again.
But the Laker
Why?
fan.
Before they lose in the postseason
Yeah,
again?
that's true, too.
Come on now.
But the Laker fan does know that LeBron went to L.A. not to be on the Lakers. That LeBron went to L.A. because of
To make
business
movies.
opportunities.
To make movies.
Listen, y'all, that doesn't matter when you deliver the
To the
championship.
fan,
He delivered the
Oh,
championship.
in a
That's
bubble.
what matters.
That indoor championship, like a
Yeah,
bunch
yeah,
of
yeah. We
plants.
don't
I mean, that
take
was
it. That's
what
very
a year
difficult. That was very difficult.
That
That's very
was-
difficult.
Wait, hold on,
To be in the
hold
bubble.
They're already discrediting when LeBron won a championship with the Lakers, calling it the bubble. Now, if you look on my channel, I got a whole video about a good majority of the NBA players that played in the bubble. They said it was the hardest championship they ever won. I'm going to break that down a little bit. You had Danny Green say he played in what? He played in 4 finals, has 3 championships. He said that was the hardest finals he ever played. LeBron played in 10. He said that was the hardest finals he ever played. Dwight Howard, he played in the finals versus Kobe. He said the bubble was the hardest championship. Bam Adebayo, he don't got a championship, but he been in 2 finals. He said that was the hardest championship he ever had. Giannis, he said that was the hardest championship he ever had, or the hardest championship to win, and he has a championship. He been to the finals. Jamal Murray said that was the highest level of basketball played. So, what I'm saying is they discredit in the bubble. But let's continue. We're gonna get a little bit more into it.
You don't-
Restricted all
you don't-
Take that
you
whole
don't count
season.
the bubble?
I hate the bubble.
Okay, you got to count it, though,
No, I
right?
don't count anything that happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
my Lord.
I'm sorry.
You
I
lucky
give
I wasn't on
LeBron-
radio against
Hey,
y'all on this
I
subject,
give
though.
Le-
You got to count that.
I give LeBron great regard and great kudos for some of his titles, especially in Cleveland,
Okay.
where what he did was unbelievably mind-boggling. But that whole season was a farce, that whole thing.
Well-
It was like a bunch of geraniums. I mean, give me
All right,
a break.
a couple of things.
Come on, that whole
couple of
season
things.
was awful.
Couple of things.
The
Don't
whole
bring
world
up
stopped.
the Cleveland championship, and don't bring up that stimulus package that the league gave LeBron and the Cavaliers by suspending Draymond, and then Bogut and
He deserved to get suspended.
please.
But look at this. I mean, they just discrediting everything he's done. This segment is supposed to be, is LeBron an all-time scorer? And all they doing is talking about, oh, it was a bubble championship. They only won in 2016 because Draymond got suspended. Like, just harping on him. And this is part of the reason why Anthony Edwards said what he said. But let's continue.
They got hurt in Game 5, and just they were going to take them out.
Hey,
in 5.
look at the roster he won with, though. I
Oh,
mean,
wait a minute.
come on.
Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, what are you talking about?
I mean, come on.
Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson. I mean, they had. Well, to me, I'm not going to lie to you. You're asking the wrong person because I love this first championship in Miami.
He
That
loves
was just
Miami.
me. That was just me.
But they were
That's just me.
disappointing in Miami. Split the baby.
Well, all right, they
Come on.
split the baby. The finals and 2
Hey,
titles back to back. That's a
They
disappointment.
set up the team. And it was basically hand delivered that they were going to get there each year. And you know what? They split the baby.
Well, all right, they
Come on.
split the baby, but at least they split it. That's
Right.
number 1. Number 2, Dwayne Wade was not healthy for the last one. It's not like they lost when they were fully loaded and healthy. Dwayne Wade did, and he played hurt. Give him credit for that. Wasn't no load management there. He played hurt. He tried. He couldn't do it.
The best thing I think he did in his career was what he accomplished, dragging teams to the finals that really
Okay.
couldn't win.
Okay.
But that he dragged there that should have lost in the first round. I mean, that were just awful teams.
But what are you
and he
talking
was
about?
able
The
to
Eastern
do that.
Conference at that time,
Hey,
Mike
but
Francesa.
still,
I mean, you had Toronto with DeMar DeRozan as their leader.
He had
You
an
had
awful team.
Indiana.
Well,
with
discredit the Eastern Conference. Now, I got another video on my page. Articles from that time calling it an Eastern Conference week in the 1990s. You can look on my page. It's all there. And not only that, Charles Barkley called the Eastern Conference week in the 90s. But let's just continue a little bit.
Paul George, even though he was a young star. But I mean, come on now.
But he had
the
an
path to
awful
resistance
roster.
wasn't that great.
but it's an awful roster that he had, and he still got there and he delivered. To me, that's what I'll remember about him. But the thing I think about him more than anything else is this guy at this age and his whole career has had the pride and the work ethic to keep himself in great shape. And he plays hard all the time. Now, I don't like sitting out games,
right?
But he hustles. He plays defense. He chases loose balls. He does it the right way. He plays hard.
And it's rare that he misses a bunch of games. He doesn't do that. We don't.
Well, anyways, the point I'm trying to make is most of this segment, all they were asking was LeBron, an all-time great scorer. All they had to do was say yes or no. But they just diminished 2 of his championships, one of them by calling it the bubble, the other one by saying it was a stimulus package for why the Cavs won in 2016 by suspending Draymond Green. Then they talk about, well, he only got to the finals because the East was weak. You know, all these different things. And what I'm saying is this is what they do. They diminish the players today because they're better. Talent has just gotten better. This is the natural way of life. This is not me making stuff up because I just want to be right. The natural way of life is evolution, progression. Just like I think LeBron is the GOAT, one day somebody's going to come in the future and he's going to be a better player than LeBron. But instead of me hating on him, trying to tear him down, I'm going to celebrate that because it'll be a while from now, but I'm going to be able to see that. Hell, I might not even be alive, but if I am, I'm going to see a level of greatness that I was used to when I was younger. Catch what I'm saying? But all they do is tear it down. So I'm going to show why Anthony Edwards was right. And it's specifically what, if you saw this Tank debating LeBron versus Jordan, Tank the singer, he explains this pretty well. And this is what I think Anthony Edwards meant.
Really? Excuse me. I could make
So as Michael Jordan was a model to Roy Jones, to Tiger Woods. When Michael Jordan came around, when an athlete is so far ahead of his time and so much better than everyone else that we just have to grade him differently, right? And so Michael Jordan, when Michael Jordan came around, was the only Michael Jordan.
That's right.
He was the only man,
That's right.
the only human capable of
Say
doing
it again. That's
what
right.
he was doing.
That's right.
Right? And
Yes.
we can go down the list of people who were like that, from Floyd Mayweather to Roy Jones to Tiger Woods. They were so far ahead in their space. But what happened is, as they are the blueprint, like I say about Michael Jackson, everyone started learning from that blueprint. And everyone started evolving from that blueprint. So as Michael Jordan was a monster among men, LeBron James is a monster among monsters. There's more than Godzilla. There's more than King Kong. You understand what I'm saying?
Really?
There's so
Really?
many monsters.
Excuse me. I could make a legitimate argument. What's your definition of monsters? Because let me tell you something right now. I'm not talking about athleticism. I'm not talking. There were times when I thought that LeBron James was better. Whether it was Kobe, whether it was KD, whomever, there was always a debate. With Michael Jordan, there was no debate. None. Nine-time all-defensive player first team, 10-time scoring champion, 6 championships, unblemished in the NBA Finals, 6 Finals MVPs. That's what I'm talking about, Tank. You can't compete with that.
He was that much better
That's
than
right.
those people in that generation. He was the first. He is the blueprint. But now you have Steph, you have KD,
Yes.
you have James Harden,
Okay.
you have the Greek the Freak,
Yep.
you have Anthony Davis, you have Embiid, you have Devin Booker,
Yeah.
you have Jason Tatum,
Uh-huh.
you have the Joker.
Yes.
The list goes on. These are monsters. And LeBron is shining above amongst these monsters who would go back in time and demolish the 80s and 90s.
LeBron?
All of them. Everybody I just named.
LeBron, let me.
So this is what I think Anthony Edwards meant when he made that comment about, you know, Jordan was the only one skilled back then. I think what he was saying was Jordan was the only one of his kind. When he came into the NBA, there was no player like him. He was the only one of his type. They had never seen anything like him. There were teams that were established, like the dynasties that he faced in the 80s. There were teams that were better. But as an individual player, they had never seen a player like him. Whereas today, it's the evolution of the sport. Everything has evolved. Everything's gotten better. You could get bench players that jump out of gym like Jordan, that could shoot the three, that could torch your team for 40, and he's a bench player. So what I'm saying is this. It's the evolution of the sport, the evolution of the game. I think what Anthony Edwards was trying to say was just today is harder because the playing field is harder. Everybody's better. Like, all around as a talent, everybody on your team is just better all around. Like, guys that are bench players today, some of them could go back then in the 80s and 90s and they could be stars. Or like main options on, I wouldn't say main options, but they could be secondary co-stars or something like that. The evolution of the sport is what he's saying. Back then, it was easier because Jordan was the only one like him. He was the only one like himself. When, like Tank was saying, the evolution of the game, Jordan was the blueprint. The game evolved from that blueprint. And now the playing field is a lot harder. And to his credit, he argued LeBron been to go over Jordan better than a lot of the people I've seen. He's saying LeBron is dominating in a harder era. And that's just a fact. But that was one of the things. And then I had one more video to show, if I can.
The big GOAT conversation.
Okay, 1 second. Only got one more thing to show real quick. All right. If I could find it. Hold on 1 second. Might have to look on my page real quick. Hold up. Okay.
I got a chance to see them both play live.
Jamie Foxx about to explain the exact same thing.
So most people, when they're giving their conversation, they're giving it from life. There is nothing like that. He's a machine. He's a scorer, and he came up at a time where he was the only one. When I look at Michael Jordan at that time, bro, GOAT hands down, because no one could touch him. At that time, there was only maybe Dominique Wilkins, who had the athleticism but there was a lot of bigs. And if you look at, and here's the thing, a lot of times people would say the GOAT, but they don't necessarily go back and look at the old games. Mm-hmm. The athleticism was the key. And see, I watched, like, I talked to Dr. J.
Okay.
There's nobody more apt to have this conversation.
Sure.
And I said, Dr. J, what's the difference? He says, oh my God, man. He said the athleticism. I saw a guy 5'10", windmill, and 360. He says, there's no way we could have done it. He said, we didn't even play basketball full time.
High schools are doing that.
Yeah, he said, we didn't even play basketball full time. He said, we would play and then we put on a yellow jacket because we were selling Century 21 homes. So it's like, he says, what people don't factor in is that these kids now, the athleticism is beyond. Russell Westbrook, bro.
We've never seen a Russell Westbrook ever, bro.
Yeah, he would run them old. Man.
There's nobody in the package that could have brought him at all. Yeah.
Paul George.
Yeah.
Dame Dollar.
Yeah.
So what I'm telling you is that now you got absolute dogs in every corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere you go to any city, you flying through turbulence.
Yeah.
You got to fly through Oklahoma. James Harden, the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
Come on, the
best team maybe ever.
Best team ever.
Yeah.
And people will shake their heads, but you have to go back and look at the old tapes. The only people that were playing basketball at that level was Michael Jordan. There was no one else. Michael Jordan's biggest foe was Joe Dumars. Joe Dumars was 6'3".
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's all I wanted. Pretty much all I wanted to show. But Jamie Foxx and Tank pretty much explained it the right way. Anthony Edwards just worded it wrong. What he's saying is, back then, Jordan was the only one like that. He was the only one of his kind. He was the only one they had ever seen jump out the gym the way he was jumping out the gym and moving as quick as he was moving. And, but the natural evolution and the progression of the game has leveled the playing field, and now it's a lot harder to compete. And I think that's just the point that Anthony Edwards was making. So, in my opinion, he was right about, what he said about the 90s. He just worded it wrong. And I think, that's the end of the video. So, if you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and I'll live stream again sometime soon.